All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick will be doing our complete Week 12 predictions, starting with the Friday games, moving through Saturday's slate. Timestamps below if you'd like to skip around. November 17th, Nick, we got a couple of interesting games. UTSA looking to make the AAC title. They're battling, a feisty USF offense led by a dynamic rushing attack. The quarterback, Brian Brown, he's been terrific this year, 659 and 9 touchdowns. 18 more through the air of 2,500 yards. Nice dual threat player here, putting up about 300 yards per contest all overall. Naquan Wright, the former Gator, he's been a really good complementary piece for this backfield. 6 touchdowns for him, 690 yards, 188 yards per contest. This is an offense that wants to run the football. They're going to look to do that with speed and, versatility on the edge. 3 straight games of 48-plus carries. This is a high-volume rushing attack, Nick. The efficiency isn't as high, though, due to that. And, they have a nice receiver. Sean Atkins has really emerged this year. 69 grabs, 800-plus yards, and 4 touchdowns. And, they're facing a pretty good UTSA defense. They love to get good production out of their outside linebackers, and that's been no different this year. Trey Moore's been terrific. I think he was a former safety that actually converted down. I think he's been playing outside linebacker his whole career. That's somebody else on their defense. 16.5 TFL, 14 sacks this year for Moore. That's just outstanding after a phenomenal freshman season. Jamori Robinson, Deion Taylor, these guys also have combined 16.5 TFL. Brandon Matterson on the defensive front. Nick Booker Brown's a veteran. So this is a very good front for UTSA. And that doesn't even include Jamal Ligdon, an inside linebacker who's been terrific for many years for UTSA. This offense for the Roadrunners, Nick, hasn't been, as dynamite as in the past. They have had some injuries at wide receiver. Of course, Zachariah Franklin, he departed in the portal. Joshua Cephas, though, Taiki Ogli-Kolag, these guys are still very good. Cephas, 800-plus yards, 8 scores, 481 for Taiki, and 6 touchdowns. And then freshman Devin McCoon, when he's been on the field, he's been very solid. And, again, this passing attack hasn't been as great. Frank Harris, though, still a veteran leader. 1,800 yards passing, 14 touchdowns. This is an offense that certainly has picked up the bait on the round a little bit this year, about $170, led by Kavorian Barnes. This is a hefty line, 16, right? But I think this is a good matchup for the UTSA defense with their backers and their defensive front, and the defense for USF is just awful. And I think the balance here will certainly be too much for them to overcome on the road. So I think USF can hang in there like what they're doing this year under Alex Gullish on offense, Nick. I just think this is going to be too much for them to cover. I'll take the Roadrunners to win this one slightly to cover the margin of -16.
This is a very interesting matchup. These 2 programs that are having interesting seasons, in my opinion. UTSA, they started off 1-3 with a bad loss at Houston, losing at home to Army. They'll be getting blown out by Tennessee. Obviously, that's on the cards. But they've rattled off 6 wins in a row in conference and look pretty good while doing it. They beat, some teams, FAU, Rice, North Texas, East Carolina here. They have a tough test at home, in my opinion, against this South Florida team that played Alabama very close at the beginning of the year. And even though their record is 5-5, I think that's not a very accurate representation of this Bulls team. I think they're a very talented team on offense with some seriously nice pieces in Wright, Atkins, and Brown. The 3 of them together are a nice trio. They scored 50 points against Memphis. They lost that game, but they put up 50 points total. They put up 35 points against UAB in a losing effort. They beat Temple. They beat Connecticut throughout this season. This is a very interesting matchup on a Friday night at the Alamo Dome. I think there's a lot going on surrounding UTSA. Their head coach, Jeff Traylor, is heavily linked to A&M, obviously being, coaching in the state of Texas. A&M does have a history of hiring coaches from programs within the state of Texas, so certainly those links do make sense to me. I like USF to cover this. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. I think UTSA will win at the end, but just 16.5 is a little too large of a line for me on a game like this on a Friday night where I feel like so much can happen. The over-under is 67.5 as well, which is a really high mark. You're certainly going to be struggling to hit that, but I think these 2 offenses can get close to that. I don't know if I would take that over. I'm going to take USF to cover, but I like UTSA to win this one outright. I think they're a very talented team pushing towards a conference title game appearance here. It's a tough conference they're playing in. Some seriously talented teams across the board, but they're 6-0 right now in the American, and they're heading towards a conference conference title game date with Tulane and/or SMU at this point. So I think this is a good UTSA Roadrunners team that's going to get the job done on Friday night.
Yeah, moving to 10:30 Eastern time on FS1, Washington State, Colorado. Cougars on a 6-game skid, 4 losses in a row for Colorado. They've certainly been more resilient, though. Shedeur Sanders still having a great year. About 70% comp rate, 300-plus yards per contest, 26 touchdowns, only 3 picks. The running game has never really found a bit of a stride this year, 69 yards per game. That's got to be one of the worst. I think that probably is the worst in FBS. coming off 3 straight games of under 80 yards and then -7 against Oregon State. This is still a group, though, like we've been saying all year long. Nick has got a great quarterback and nice weapons. Travis Hunter, 45 grabs in 7 games for 532 yards. Jimmy Horn's got 54 and 536. Him and Xavier Weaver have combined 10 touchdowns, with Weaver leading the charge, 65 grabs, 867 yards of his own. Other than that, though, this Colorado team doesn't have much to really write home about. You got to, certainly respect the heart they played with the last couple weeks. All 4 games, they've been decided by 12 points or less. They lost to Arizona at home by 3. Oregon State only lost to them by 7. Back-to-back home games, of course. Blew that big lead to Stanford. At UCLA, they were able to force 3 or 4 turnovers in that one, so that was able to stay close. Also had a garbage time touchdown. This offensive line, though, it's still one of the nation's worst, if not the worst in FBS. Washington State, they only have 17 sacks of their own. For Brennan Jackson, Ron Stone, these are veteran pass rushers. I think they're going to win often on the edge, like some of the depth they have on the interior as well. This is a Washington State defense that certainly hasn't been playing as good as I probably thought they would be, especially here during this losing streak, 30 points per game they are allowing. I like the veterans in the secondary as well. Chelsea Smith-Wade, he's a good ball player for them. Sam Lockett is a terrific safety. Jaden Hicks. I know these guys are 2 of the higher-graded players in the conference. So I think this defense is going to have a big day led by this pass rush, Nick. I think those guys on the boundary are going to be able to win. And even though this offense for Washington State has just went completely down the tube, I don't know what happened. 2 games held to under 10 points during this losing streak. Arizona, who has proved to be a very good defense, and then Stanford, I don't know what happened there. They only had 4 rush yards that afternoon, 241 through the air. So this offense, Nick, is completely fallen off a cliff. They have no run game, only 81 yards per game, and it should be in the 120, 130 yard per game range in this offensive system. And Cameron Ward, he was in the early Heisman race, still averaging 300-plus yards a game, 20 touchdowns, only 5 picks. But the offensive line for Washington State is also just as bad, and that's why they've really struggled on this side of the ball. Jordan Dominic, the Arkansas transfer, has really emerged this year. He's been a terrific ball player for them. Levante Bentley as well. Taja Alston. Some of these guys really, making names for themselves, pencil in as starters, because this was obviously, a defense that was filled with plenty of transfers. Shiloh Sanders has been good at safety. Trevor Woods as well. Nice duo there. Some, better football players in the back end. And, of course, Travis Hunter is a terrific corner as well. I just think this passing attack, stylistically, is going to be tough for Colorado. They really struggle to defend underneath. A lot of open space. Lincoln Victor, Kyle Williams, Josh Kelly. These guys are absolutely going to dominate in that area. I'll take Washington State to cover in this one. Hard to say that, considering this team's lost 6 in a row, Nick, and they've just been awful on both sides of the ball throughout this skid. Pass rushers are going to win. Offense will, expose that space, and I think Washington State will cover in this one. Colorado won't get blown out, though. That'd be kind of disrespectful considering how they've been playing as of late in losses. I'll take the cover. Not all that confident in it, though.
I will also take the cover. Not too confident. I'm going to take Wazoo to barely cover. These are 2 teams battling for bowl eligibility. Washington State's got a tougher road here. Obviously, they play Colorado, then they play Washington in the Apple Cup, which is certainly a tough draw for them. Meanwhile, Colorado plays at Washington State here, and they also play Utah as they try to strive for bowl eligibility during Deion Sanders' first year in Colorado. Been not a great month for these 2 teams, right? Colorado lost 4 in a row, like you said. Washington State lost 6 in a row, including a bad 10-7 loss at Stanford. I mean, how are you only scoring 7 points at home against Stanford, only 6 points at home to Arizona in a thumping, where Arizona beat them 44-6. They lost to Cal this past week, 42-39. So things are just not going great for the Cougars at all. It's a very talented team that has a great offense that just seems to be missing at times. Cam Ward, for his part, obviously he's having a great season, 3,000 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But the rest of the offense is very, very poor, very sluggish. The running game does not exist at all right now. And it's just been a disappointment for Colorado. We knew that defense was going to be a struggle this year for them. They've struggled in a lot of different cases. The offense has looked good at times. Xavier Weaver, Jimmy Horn are great wide receivers. Sanders looks good in the pocket. He's a very talented quarterback who's getting better over time. The 26-3 interception ratio is solid with the 3,000 yards passing. They can't run the ball at all still, Colorado, and that's a big issue for this team. It's a shame. People are not going to be happy, or some people are not going to be happy that Colorado's going to fall to 4-7. But this is just not really working right now. Obviously, it's a long-term rebuild for Deion Sanders and company, but I think some Colorado fans expected a lot better in this first season, and losing on the road Friday night to Washington State's not going to make a lot of them happy, but I think it's a tough place to play. It's going to be cold up there in Pullman, and I'm going to take the home team in this one to cover the spread. Should be a shootout. 2 teams with great offenses but very poor defenses.
Now moving to the 12 p.m. slate on Saturday, Maryland hosting Michigan. They started 5-0. Played a very good first half against Ohio State. That's pretty much all she wrote for 2023, Nick, because they lost 4 in a row. They just beat Nebraska 13-10. They got hammered by Penn State, lost to Northwestern, lost at home to Illinois. And, of course, the Buckeyes were able to capitalize on a strong second half. So I don't know what happened. Mike Locksley, just a really bad coaching job. I mean, these are teams they should certainly be beating and then playing better against Penn State. And the offense has been a big reason for it. Tali, talk about lowest ceiling. Again, seems to be reached. Something we kind of talked about in the preseason. 22 touchdowns, 280 yards per game. This guy that certainly continues to make mistakes of 8 interceptions. Nice group of weapons in Deshaun Jones, Ty Felton, Caden Prather. Love what they have here. Even Corey Deitch is at tight end, very impressive. Roman Hemby, nice running back. The run game, though, only about $1.15 per contest. That certainly was expected to be a lot higher. In Michigan, the only thing really standing in front of them in Ohio State is the Terrapins and Minnesota from, a game of the century type feel in 2 weeks. Michigan's not going to lose this game. I don't think they're going to even have Maryland cover the spread. I think Michigan's going to be incredibly focused for this one. J.J. McCarthy and this ground game that really picked up some steam last week. Blake Corum, with his 18 touchdowns, near 800 yards. I think they're going to be able to take care of business here on the road against a Maryland team that's really just been, stifled on offense and they've been poor on defense. Not so much on the stat sheet, but they just couldn't get off the field against Northwestern. Penn State, their offense really isn't all that great. They give up 400-plus yards in that one. They're not getting abused on this side of the ball, Nick, and they never really have under Locksley. I just don't think they're really going to have the pass rush here to deal with this Michigan, balance. Bayou Braid's phenomenal. Dante Trader, some nice guys in the secondary. Terb Still as well. Some veterans that are certainly going to play very good ball. Linebacking core, those kind of been just a mystery. Jayshawn Barham was supposed to be an elite player for him this year. Instead, he's like, the fourth or fifth leading tackler amongst their linebackers. So I think Maryland, they're going to hang in here for, quarter and a half, maybe even end the first 30 minutes completely. I think Michigan's certainly going to pull away in this one, Nick. They're going to cover. I think the Tully's going to make too many mistakes, and the stifled offense from Maryland just will not be enough. As Michigan, they have tremendous guys up front. Jisiah Stewart, Jalen Harrell, Chris Jenkins, Rashawn Benny, just phenomenal defensive linemen, and a good secondary led by Will Johnson and Makari Page. I think this will be too much here. Wolverines are going to run away with this one, setting up a big showdown for next week.
Same old story from Maryland. They start off very hot, 5-0, and then just fall apart in the second half of the schedule. You basically get the same thing every year at Maryland or Mike Locksley. They have a great start to the year. People are, hyping this team up. They're excited for this team. And they just cool off rapidly. Like you said, bad losses versus Illinois, Northwestern, blowouts at Ohio State and Penn State, barely beating Nebraska on the road last week to barely scrape bowl eligibility. Tough ask now hosting the Wolverines. Even with Jim Harbaugh not coaching, obviously they're trying to go through the courts right now, and that system is being handled. That situation is being handled through the courts. Potentially may coach, they may get a restraining order. Yada yada yada. I don't think it makes any difference in this game. I think they'll be fine with the interim head coach. I think they're going to run away with this one. I am covering the 19-point spread. It's a lofty line on the road, but I think they have just a talented offense to do so. And you saw it last week against Penn State, where they don't even throw the ball to have success. They didn't throw the ball at all in the second half, and yet the Penn State offense still had success. The Michigan offense still had success. Was able to get the job done. Blake Corum, 18 touchdowns on the ground, 794 yards. J.J. McCarthy looks fantastic at quarterback, nearly 2,200 yards, 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Spreading it out to a cast of wide receivers that aren't super talented, with Wilson leading the way with about 600 yards receiving and 10 scores. Tagovailoa, for his part, I think he is a talented quarterback, but like you said, his ceiling has been met. This is what you're going to get out of him pretty much every year is, pushing 3,000 yards passing, roughly 20 to 25 touchdowns, and then, anywhere from 5 to 10 turnovers. And you're really in that sweet spot right now. They haven't been running the ball as efficiently as of late for Maryland, which has certainly been a problem for this offense. And the defense has found themselves getting a ton of points put up on them in a lot of their games, other than the game against Nebraska, where they kept the scoring low and held them to 10 points. I like Michigan in this one. I think Michigan continues to push towards being one of the better teams in the country. And like you said, that big matchup with Ohio State is looming. We could potentially get to the point where maybe the committee ranks them 1-2. We get a game of the century type setup. If not, certainly going to be a top 5 matchup when that kicks off in Ann Arbor. A huge opportunity for both those teams coming up in Michigan. I think they're going to sleepwalk through this way and focus on Ohio State in the future.
Looking at Penn State hosting Rutgers. Both of these teams coming off pretty tough weeks. James Franklin firing Mike Yurcich after, having his own pretty poor coaching decisions to lose at home to the Wolverines. Rutgers getting shut out on the road against Iowa. Both teams looking for a bounce back. Plus 20.5 is what I'm looking at now for Rutgers. And I think Rutgers will go ahead and cover. I think a 24-3 type feel is going to happen here. Obviously, they ran the ball very well against Ohio State. Kyle Mongai, Gavin Wimsatt at quarterback, 7 touchdowns each for those guys, 170 yards rushing. Very happy with the Rutgers rushing attack this year. It's something for years I've talked about that they should already be at this level, and they're finally achieving it under Schiano. Passing attack, though, about $140 a game. Westman completing more 48% and 6 touchdowns. facing a very good Penn State defense. We don't need that to be lost. Michigan's able to grind down on them a good bit, but when your offense is going 3 and out every play, that's certainly concerning. And they shut down Michigan's passing attack. The Wolverines wanted no part of this Nittany Lion pass rush. That's why they opted to throw 0 passes in that second half. This is a guy, Adiza Isaac, Danny Dennis, Sutton, Chop Robinson, some phenomenal pass rushers here. They're certainly going to work. Curtis Jacobs, a nice playmaker in the middle. And then guys like Johnny Dixon on the outside. Daquan Hardy's been really good in the slot. Kalen King as well. Dominic DeLuca is a nice, versatile hybrid player for them. Kevin Winston emerging as safety. This is just going to be tough for the Rutgers offense to go on the road and score points. I don't think Penn State's going to exactly score any points either. They're also facing a very tough defense led by Mohamed Toure, Aaron Lewis, Wesley Bailey. The guys we talked about all the way back in August on the defensive line have been just phenomenal for this football team. And, of course, Tyreen Powell, their top backer. He's been ruled out for the year. It's been like that for a couple weeks now, but they haven't had really any troubles. Deion Jennings has been stepping up immensely. Flip Dixon, the transfer, has been great in the secondary. Max Melton as well. So I think it's going to be hard for Penn State to generate big plays. I think they'll be able to run the ball to a solid tune to put them on the scoreboard. I'll take the under in this game. Rutgers to cover slightly. It's going to be hard for them to cover points. I think they'll have just enough short fields where they'll be able to capitalize off some Penn State mistakes to cover in this one. Nick, how are you feeling about the Scarlet Knights?
I agree with you. I think Rutgers here, they're coming off a tough loss to Iowa on the road where they got shut out. Really did not look good at all in that game. I think they will cover the 20.5 point spread. This is a pretty lofty point spread for these two teams. I think it is going to be a low scoring affair. I like the under a whole lot here. I think something similar to what you said is possible. I'm thinking maybe like a 20 to 10 sort of score, something like that, where this, just a low scoring affair. This Penn State offense is talented, but they just struggled against Michigan last week. They made some bad decisions. They fired Yorsick, obviously. I don't think Yorsick was the problem. They fired him and just kind of made that move now. Interesting to see how this offense looks under its new offensive coordinator for this game. I like Rutgers' defense. It's a very physical defense. They're very strong in the trenches. They dominate when they need to. I also think they can run the ball pretty well at Rutgers, which is a very big deal for them. They're able to have a nice, efficient running attack. We saw that Penn State struggled against the run in the second half. Michigan didn't even throw the ball at all against Penn State's defense in the second half and really just kind of played with them at that point, just ran the ball over and over again. Rutgers, certainly key to success for this team is to run the ball this weekend in Happy Valley. Penn State fans are not happy with the state of their team. We talked about James Franklin in an episode earlier this week, so there's no need to really go in depth with it here, but I think Rutgers is going to cover this game. And again, this team is a tough team. They may not win a lot of games. Rutgers, they may lose games to the bigger teams, but they keep it close with the bigger teams. They kept it close to Ohio State in that first half. They fought hard. The Iowa game, in my opinion, is an outlier. This team's a physically tough fighting team. This Rutgers Scarlet Knights team, they're bowl eligible. They're going to be in a bowl this year. I think they're going to give Penn State a bit of a run for their money here, but ultimately Penn State's talent to be enough to pull them through. I do like Rutgers to cover the spread, though.
Looking at Louisville in Miami, the Cards looking to officially punch their ticket to Charlotte, going on the road to Coral Gables. Louisville, I didn't think the rushing attack would be better than the passing offense this year. That's really been the case. Jawar Jordan, 976, 11 scores, 492 and 7 for Isaac Garendo, the transfer from Wisconsin, about $1.88 per contest for this rushing attack. They've been phenomenal. And, the passing attack, Plummer, certainly still completing 66%, but he has 9 interceptions. Has been inconsistent with his accuracy and his playmaking. 2,400 yards this year, 16 touchdowns. Jamari Thrash having a great year. And I thought that we'd see better production overall from this receiving core, and you have it. You still have 5 guys over 200-plus yards. And, they're certainly sharing the wealth. But I thought these guys would have a lot better numbers. Chris Bell and Thrash, the only guys averaging more than 30 yards per game. That's only 31 for Bell. So they certainly have not been that productive through the air like I figured they would be. And this Miami defense is still a very tough unit. They went on the road to Tallahassee, put up a valiant effort, completely stonewalled the run. They've been really good against the run this year. Outside of the game against UNC, Virginia certainly had some success of $138 on the ground, but this is still a really good rushing defense. Francisco Miaga at linebacker of his 15 TFL. Ruben Bain has stepped up immensely as a freshman up front. Branson Dean, Thomas Gore. This is still a lot of talent on this defensive line. Leonard Taylor as well, a guy that was really banged up last week, playing hard. Terrific safeties in James Williams and Cameron Kitchens. Jaden Davis has been having a quite solid year in the secondary. And now they're back to Tyler Van Dyke, a guy who's just really had problems with interceptions, 12 of them on the year. Obviously gave Emory Williams a chance, and he didn't play the greatest of games. Ended up going out. Resilient play on 4th down, but it came at a cost as he broke his arm or something of that nature. Running game for Miami. On the stat sheet, he looks solid, $172. 3 different guys at, 350 yards. And they were able to do solid work against FSU. But this just has not been a dominant ground game for Miami, playing a Louisville run defense that's been a lot better than we expected. We knew Ashton Gelati would be good. But the other guys around him have stepped up Raymond Perrier, Mason Rager, Jeremiah Lowell, the transfer. They've been playing very good on this defensive line. Antonio Watts is 6 TFL. TJ Quinn, 72 tackles for him. I'm very impressed with what they've been able to do against the run, Nick. I just think Miami in this game, they're going to shut down the rushing attack. They're going to put the ball in Plummer's hands against 2 good safeties, and I think the Ball Hawks are certainly going to be out for Miami. And again, Van Dyke, he's probably going to turn over the ball as well, Nick, but I think it's going to be a more conceded approach from Miami. Cameron Kelly, Devin Neal, guys are ready to try to pounce on the football. 11 interceptions this year for that Louisville Cardinal defense. I'll take Miami here. You're getting a +1 outright. It's only -110. Pretty close line here, but last week against Virginia, they were awful, Nick. Louisville was not very good. We talked about that game. The line was at like 20, and I was like, Virginia will probably cover, and they almost darn near won the game with 314 passing yards. I think Louisville right now, they've been trending kind of in the wrong direction, it seems, in some of these contests. I know they've had great success against Duke and Virginia Tech. They looked awful against Pittsburgh. Didn't look that great against Virginia. I think Miami here, they're going to play with a bit of a chip on their shoulder and, one of their final home games.
Certainly a game to circle on the schedule and keep your eye on. I do like the Cardinals in this one. I'm going to take them win this game. I have some reasoning for it. Louisville, I feel bad for those fans because they hadn't lost to Pitt. They'd be right in the thick of the playoff conversation because if they won the ACC undefeated, they would be in the playoff, which is a crazy thing to say in 2023 that Louisville could have been a playoff contender. That one loss, though, to Pitt has kind of knocked them out of contention, although they still have a chance to win the conference and play spoiler and keep Florida State potentially out of the college football playoff here. Tough break for the Cardinals. I was excited for this team in the offseason. They were my biggest sleeper team. I was very high on them, and they've exceeded my expectations exponentially. And it's crazy that Jamar Jordan, and the running game is what's really been the key to success for this offense. Nearly 1,000 yards for Jordan, 11 touchdowns. Plummer has not taken that step forward that I thought he would take. The 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions ratio is a very poor ratio, 2,400 yards passing. Plummer just really has not gone where I thought he would with this offense, and that's fine because the running game has bailed him out. Jamari Thrash is having a good season. 734 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. The defense has been the key for Louisville. They've been very solid. 3 points against Virginia Tech, shut out Duke, played really strong against Notre Dame. Yes, they looked a little weak against UVA and did not look good at all against Pitt. I think overall the body of work for this Louisville defense is fantastic. I am going to take the Cardinals. I'm going to take the team with the better rushing attack in a one like this when you have 2 quarterbacks who I think are going to make mistakes. Van Dyke, 12 interceptions, just an atrocious number for him. 16 touchdowns, 2,000 yards passing. The 12 interceptions is a poor number. I'm going to take the Cardinals because their rushing attack is just that much better. They have a very balanced rushing attack, and Miami now has lost 2 in a row, including a bad loss at NC State and lost this past weekend in Tallahassee against Florida State. I like the Cardinals in this one. I think, it's basically a pick 'em at -1. I like what you can get there, which is you compared to the money line. It's not a bad bet at all. This is a good game to watch at noon on Saturday. I like this game a lot. Louisville wants to punch their tickets to the ACC title game, which I didn't have them in my ACC title game in the preseason, so certainly exceeding expectations with Jeff Braun and the company in their first year. Very excited for the future of the Cardinals.
Now looking at the mid-afternoon slate, Georgia and Tennessee, game of the week. We broke this one down in full, so we'll just kind of skim over it. Tennessee coming off an awful performance against Missouri on putting up 7 points. Not much separation other than Dante Thornton touchdown. Ended up getting injured, out for the year now. So wide receiver talent is starting to really diminish. Squirrel Wright, Romeo Keaton still there, though. McCown Castles at tight end. Kalen Webb, Shaz Nimrod. Some of these guys are going to have to really step up in the receiving core, and their production this year hasn't really proved they're really ready to take on that heavy workload. Milton's got to be better, though, certainly. Completing 65%, 16 touchdowns, 5 picks. He's been taking care of the football, right? And he also has 5 rushing touchdowns. He's just been very inaccurate. The deep ball has either really been hit or miss for Tennessee. When he puts it on them, they drop it, or he just misses them completely. And that's been the case in his short to intermediate throwing as well, where he's just been very inaccurate. I think he's going to be better. I think this entire offense will be a lot better. 3-headed monster of Wright, Sampson, and Small all have 400+ rushing this year. They're looking to run right downhill at a Georgia defense that's certainly been vulnerable at times to the run this year. Guys like Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson, Smail Munden's really going to have to continue to step up along with C.J. Allen, as Javon Dumas-Johnson will not play. And when you're running against an offense like this, can be tough, but I think they certainly passed the test last week against Ole Miss with what they were able to do for the other 3 quarters in this game. For Georgia, the rushing attack, they had their best contest of the year. 300 rushing, 5 touchdowns, 8.5 yards per carry. Finally showcasing that physical dominance we kind of been calling them out on this year. Tennessee, this is the first time in 25 games they allowed over 200 rushing yards. This is a legit run defense. They are good, and they're going to look to bounce back after getting shredded by Cody Schrader. They got the players to get it done. James Pierce, Aaron Beasley, Tyler Barron, Omar Norman Lott as well. Some very talented ball players in their front 6. secondary, though, I think they're starting to be prone to some bigger plays. But I love the safeties, though. The veteran guys, and Jalen McCullough's having a great year. Tamarian McDonald, the corner Gabe Judy Lally, and then, of course, another safety in Wesley Walker. So I think they certainly have the veteran leadership here to try and completely just mess up the college football playoffs, mess up this Georgia winning streak, Nick. And I think they're certainly going to come out there, take a lot of risks. And I think those will be close for the first half. But, we saw in the second half, they get shut out. They were pretty much shut out last week against Missouri. They were playing pretty poor on defense against Kentucky. So this is a team I think that's certainly not going to be capable of playing a full 4 quarters. I'm going to take Georgia to cover and pull away late just because the balance of their offense is too good. Carson Beck really coming into his own. Brock Bowers coming back. But I think Tennessee can certainly win this game. Again, I can't bank on them to win 60 minutes of football at this moment in time, Nick. So I'll take Georgia to cover. I think we'll have a great game, though.
I think it'll be competitive in the first quarter. I think Tennessee will hang in early, get the crowd movement going, but then Georgia will just step on their throats in the second quarter, like they did against Ole Miss, like they did against Missouri, Florida, etc. This Georgia team is very talented. This offense is fantastic. They're really cooking at a high rate of speed. They have Brock Bowers back, who seems to be fully healthy. Another great weapon for Beck. Carson Beck having a phenomenal season, 3,000 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. Going on the road in a tough environment. Neyland, he hasn't really played in a tough environment. Auburn was certainly a tough environment. That's not a very good team. Tennessee is definitely better than Auburn. It's very tough to play at Neyland, so I think that's something to keep an eye on early on. Maybe he makes a mistake or two and gets the crowd energy in it, but I just think Georgia has too much talent to lose this Tennessee team that put up only 7 points on the road at Missouri this past week and looked really embarrassing in that performance. They looked bad against Alabama, looked bad against A&M in a win. They didn't look great against Kentucky in a win. So Tennessee, a bit of a free fall here. This team is just underachieving the expectations that fan base has, the high expectations that fan base has, after what happened last year with the fall apart on their season if they beat Alabama. I just don't see a way they beat Georgia here. I think Georgia's going to win this game and cover the spread. And Georgia, preparing for this matchup at Alabama in the SC title game, a huge matchup that's looming large for this team. I like them to take care of Tennessee and take care of business here in this one. Not really a super competitive game, in my opinion. Tennessee will hang around early, but that's about it.
Looking at another ACC clash, North Carolina, Clemson on ESPN. The UNC defense in the preseason, I said, it's probably going to let me down. I'm tired of banking on them to step up. That's why I didn't have the greatest of predictions for them. Talked about great individual players they have, like Cedric Gray, Power Eccles, Kamari, and Rucker. These guys are having great years, right? Miles Murphy, Desmond Evans at times. I think their defensive line talent is phenomenal. I think they could certainly have a matchup edge against this Clemson offensive line that certainly has been poor at times. The run defense is just not good. They got gashed against Virginia, Georgia Tech. Duke's third-string quarterback hung 45 on him. This defense is just absurd, and I think Clemson here at home, with what they've been able to do the last couple of weeks, they really established some rhythm. Cade Klubnik certainly has been an inconsistent player, doing the best he can without some of his best weapons, but season high 4 touchdowns this past week. Tyler Brown, he certainly has helped out this offense mostly in the second half of the year. Bayou Collins really stepped up. Antonio Williams has been hurt for the longest. I'm not even sure what his status is. Probably won't even play. Jake Brinkstool. Some nice guys that can certainly hurt you off play action for what's going to be a dynamite run game. Phil Moffa, Will Shipley, these guys I think they're going to have a big day. 170 rushing yards per game for Clemson. Certainly have struggled at times, but I don't think this is a matchup they're going to hurt in. While Drake May, this guy was supposed to be a player that elevates his team. He really has. He's had to carry him. 21 touchdowns, 3,100 yards. Another 8 rushing, but he only has 276 on the ground, which is certainly a staggering number. 6 interceptions. Some of his picks and turnovers this year have just been inexcusable. They've been ridiculous. Had one against Duke where he's backed up into his own end zone. He just throws it up. Rookie mistakes really from a guy that was supposed to be a Heisman contender. Tez Walker, 35 grabs, 600 yards, 6 touchdowns. Those are all team highs, Nick, other than the receptions where he has one less than Bryson Nesbitt and Nate McCollum. This guy's only played in 6 games, and he's putting up numbers like this. Very absurd. Like J.J. Jones, Kobe Paysor, whenever he's been healthy. Very nice, deep receiving core for UNC. Paysor, though he hasn't played, in a week, so you probably rule him out. They've kind of been banged up in that area. Amari Hampton, he's been great. 1,236 yards, 13 touchdowns rushing, so they do have ideal balance. That's going to come to a crushing end here against this defense. Jeremiah Trotter, he's great. Barrett Carter didn't play in the last game. Expect him to be fully ready to go. TJ Parker, Tyler Davis. This isn't a defensive line that's going to do very good. I think they're going to have a hell of a game here against UNC. I think the rushing attack will dominate as well. I'll go ahead and pick them to cover 6.5, get about a touchdown there. I think they'll go ahead and take care of business as they'll slow down Drake May in this big play passing attack. I think they'll be limited in doing that with some good lockdown corners, guys in the back end. You look at, the safety position, for example. RJ Minkins has been terrific. Jalen Phillips as well. Nate Wiggins out wide. I think they're just going to slow them down, and I think this offense will have no issue running the ball. They'll be effective with play action. Give me Clemson to cover. You're thinking the opposite, though.
I'm going to think the opposite here. I am going to take the Tar Heels here. 8-2, a bit disappointing for this team. Two bad losses to Georgia Tech and Virginia have derailed what looked like a very positive season for the Tar Heels. Drake May, he's having a pretty solid season. Isn't quite to the Heisman level that I had hoped he would have been. But I think he's having a fantastic season. 3,100 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, 6 picks. Not bad numbers for him at all. Klubnik, for his part, is having a pretty good season as well. And, some of the fan base wants to blame him. I don't think he deserves any blame at this point. I think he's having a pretty solid season. The stats with him are not bad for the young signal caller. 2,200 yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Phil Maffa, Will Shipley, pretty nice duo that Clemson has in the backfield. They just really lack that talent at wide receiver for me. I think that I'm going to take UNC to win this one. I think UNC will get a stop. I know it's crazy gambling and betting on the UNC defense, but I think they're going to be able to get a stop when they need to. I just have confidence in them this week for some reason. I just like what I see at a UNC sometimes. I think they can win this game. They beat Miami earlier in the year. I think they're going to follow a similar blueprint to that game, high-scoring shootout game like a 41-30 type score. I like Tar Heels to go on the road and get the, I don't know if you want to call it an upset, but get the win on the road at Memorial Stadium and be a tough break for Clemson, who are really having a tough season. They're barely scraping bowl eligibility at this point. Dabo, the vultures are coming out for him. I think it's a tough job right now in Clemson. I do like the Tar Heels in this one to win this one. I don't have a whole lot of great reasoning why. I just feel confident in the Tar Heels this week for some reason. They got the job done.
Now looking at a big matchup in the Mountain West, UNLV and Air Force. Everyone's talking about the Falcons potentially sliding their way into near 6, and I think Troy Calhoun's a great coach, but I was like, just give us some time, you'll see. And Air Force has lost back-to-back games by double figures, 4 turnovers against Army, only 13 points against Hawaii. This offense is just not built to play a certain way, and they have to get out to a lead, and they have to be able to control the football. They were 50% on third down last week, and it's a solid number, but they really want to be higher than that. I know that's their number on the year, but if this team's about 60% or higher, they're really hard to defeat. Zach Lear, Emmanuel Mitchell, John Lee Eldridge, a nice rushing attack in typical Air Force fashion. 275 rushing per game. They've really been held in check the last couple, though. 3 of the last 4, they've been held to under 200 rushing yards. And then UNLV, they've been pretty stout this year. They even played Michigan earlier this year. They held up pretty solidly, I guess, 180 yards, gave up 5.4 yards per carry. But they're, they have physicality under their belt. They beat Vanderbilt, completely stifled that rushing attack. They've been really sound in the trenches this year, 3.7 yards per game allowed. They've not allowed 200 rushing on the ground yet this season. They have some very good players up front, Jalen Dixon, Alexander Whitmore. And, Barry Odom's got this team clicking, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They've drastically improved. And, there's no real standout on the offensive side of the ball. Vincent Davis, maybe the Pitt transfer. Jaden Thomas, 420 and 9 touchdowns. Donovan Laster with 8 scores. 31 rushing touchdowns for this UNLV football team. Ricky White, I love what he's able to do. Former Michigan State wide receiver. He's probably going to be the one elite standout for him, over 1,000 yards this season. And then the quarterback, the young Jaden Maiva, he's been solid with, about 205 a game, completing 65%. I'll go ahead and lean on Air Force to get this one done because they are at home, Nick. Air Force, the last couple of games have not been great. UNLV, love what they've been able to do this season. Big-time game here. I'll just go ahead and take a stab at Air Force. At the end of the day, I'm just going to stay away from this one and just watch it on CBSSN as a football fan.
I also am going to stay away from betting this game, but I am going to watch this game because I think it's a very intriguing game. Air Force, I talked about them a lot earlier in the season when they were having their great run. I might have been into the hype a little bit. You should have brought me down a little bit. You tried to. I didn't really listen to you. They lost badly to Army and lost, a pretty embarrassing loss at Hawaii. I do, Clemson's like traveling out there, playing the Rainbow Warriors on the road is a tough ask. This UNLV team is getting better throughout the season. Their one loss in conference at Fresno State. It's a tough loss, but they played them close. This is a very talented UNLV team that has nice balance. I like what they have at quarterback, 2,000 yards passing, 11 scores, and 4 interceptions to their quarterback. Obviously, Air Force, the name of the game is going to be run the ball, run the ball. Just absolutely pound the rock on the ground. And they have a good quarterback who's a good leader in Leyer, who's pretty solid at that. 744 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. Obviously, the name of the game is running. Like I said, I do like UNLV to win this game. I think they are going to win this game in an upset fashion. I think it's going to be close, 28-24, something like that. UNLV wants to stamp their spot in the Mountain West Conference title game. This has been a very interesting way the season has unfolded in the Mountain West because you have a bunch of teams here that are all kind of fighting for that conference title game berth. Air Force, UNLV, Fresno State, Boise State, San Jose State are all kind of within striking distance of making the conference title game, especially those top 3 teams. Fresno State's really looking here, hoping that Air Force wins to give them a chance to jump into that race because they already have the head-to-head over UNLV. I like the Rebels in this one. They're a very fun team to watch, very underrated team. This is a great matchup of 2 8-2 teams out west in the afternoon slate. I love this game. I'll be tuning in. I'm very excited for this game, but give me the Rebels here.
Yeah, I think Ricky White's going to have a big day, 150, 200 receiving, but Air Force, they play tough physical defense. Bo Richer, PJ Ramsey, Trey Taylor, some phenomenal players. They really coach them well on this side of the ball. I'll go ahead and stick with Air Force, but I'll probably be rooting for UNLV. And then to cap things off, potentially Caleb Williams' final game as a SC Trojan. Maybe Chip Kelly's last game as a UCLA Bruin. Nick, big one in LA, 3:30, bit of an earlier kickoff. UCLA, they've been playing great defense this year, as expected. They got guys like Grayson, Gabriel Murphy, MICH-MARY. I mean, this is a phenomenal pass rush as we expected, but they've been a lot better than even I thought they would be. Alex Johnson's leading the way in the secondary with 4 picks. I thought the secondary would be highly improved this year as well. And again, they've just been shattering expectations at all 3 levels. Darius Masau at linebacker, some seniors on both sides of the ball for these teams. The offense, though, for UCLA has been a problem, but the USC defense is so awful. They could play anybody, and they'll still give up 40 points and plenty of yards. So I'm not really even sure who the quarterback is at this moment in time. Ethan Garbers, Colin Sheil. I believe Sheil is the one who's getting the nod. It's really going to be on the rushing attack, though, that I think is probably going to have the most success. TJ Harden, Carson Steele. I think these guys will run for plenty of yards. Caleb Williams in this offense, though, Nick. They've certainly, they had some struggles against Oregon. No one really expected them to compete in that game. He's still having a great year, though. 3,200 yards passing, 29 passing touchdowns, 11 more on the ground. The rushing attack at times has been very sound by, Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd. And then you got plenty of weapons in Taj Washington and Brennan Rice. As a Trojan fan, no pick for me. What are your expectations for this game? Do you think it's going to be a last for a couple of these guys?
This is an interesting game. It certainly is, the last of an era for some of these teams. Caleb Williams obviously preparing to make the jump to the NFL draft most likely. I am going to take UCLA. I think UCLA has a very talented team here. I know both these teams have struggled as of late, but I am going to take UCLA. I just have a feeling they're going to get the job done on the road. Chip Kelly, his name is being circulated as potentially fired at this point. I don't know if I like that move. I think this could be a last chance for him to get one more win before he's out the door. Maybe it saves his job. You never really know with college football at this point. Caleb Williams having a great season despite USC's defensive woes, keeping them out of the playoff. They looked a little better at times, but they still looked terrible against Oregon. They had, players in the secondary getting totally beaten, being lost. I like UCLA in this one. It's a fun matchup, battle for LA. It's a close line, 6.5. Certainly the bookies are favoring USC at this point. I do like the Bruins here. I think the Bruins have a very solid offense. They've struggled the past 2 weeks, right? 7 points versus Arizona State, 10 points against Arizona. Not great numbers. I have a feeling that Dante Moore will get a little bit better this week and get the job done. Technically on the road here in this matchup. I do like the Bruins in this one. This is definitely an interesting game as we kind of end towards the end of the Pac-12 era. Obviously, both these teams are heading to the Big Ten with each other, but UCLA potentially going through a lot of change. USC will have a new quarterback next year, potentially a lot of question marks here. We could see a lot of legacies ending at this point in time. So maybe Caleb Williams goes out and steals his show in his final game, potentially in a USC uniform. This one's a very much a toss-up in my opinion, but I am going to take the Bruins here. Not too confident about the pick, though.
Looking at the nightcap, Washington, Oregon State broke this one down in full. So we'll just kind of slightly go over it. Very almost pick-em-like game. I know it was -1 in favor of Washington just the other day. So it depends on what book you're getting it at. Oregon State, this seems like a matchup they could really dominate in with their ability to run the ball, led by Damian Martinez, Deshaun Fenwick, nice running back duo there. Of course, Talise Fuaga, at guard is one of the nation's top run blockers. DJ Uyunglele, 20 touchdowns, 4 picks. We figured that the speed of their passing attack would allow them to have nice, ideal balance this year with Anthony Golden, Cialis Bolden. 38 points per game for Oregon State. They're just doing exactly what we thought they would, 453 per game. In the defense, they've been a lot better than we probably thought they would because they replaced so many guys. Andrew Chatfield finally stepping up, though. Sion Leola and defensive line. James Rawls hasn't been as good, but other guys have been playing good, like Isaac Hodgins on the defensive line. Easton McCartney, Arnold at linebacker. Secondary, though, seems like they're probably going to be putting some bad situations out wide. Alakil Arnold, Keaton Oladipo at safety. These guys are going to have to be sound and making plays downfield. Washington really hurt you outside the boundary. It's put up or shut up time. Michael Penix in his passing attack. Michael's looking to get back on track after some misfires against Utah. Romo Duns and Jalen Polk. Polk's about to become the second receiver for the Huskies to be at 1,000 yards. Jack Westover really stepped up. Jalen McMillan, we're still waiting on his status. Dylan Johnson, he's having some bigger games the last couple of weeks, up to 790 and 11 rushing touchdowns. And I love what they have, in terms of Roger Rosengarten on their offensive line, Troy Falau as well. They have some very good tackles. They've been sound. And I think this pass rush is going to be limited for Oregon State due to that. And I think even though they might have a lot of success on offense, I think Washington will do just enough to escape. But I talked about it a couple of days ago. I think Oregon State could completely win this game by a lopsided margin, But I think Huskies, with so much in front of them, are going to step up here if Kalen DeBoer's group.
Totally agree. This is put up or shut up time. Washington banging on the door of the first playoff appearance since they made the playoffs in 2017, where they lost to Alabama in the Peach Bowl. This is or 16-17. Beg your pardon. This is a big opportunity for the Pac-12 to get a playoff team in their last season before obviously they got pulled apart. Oregon State, one of those teams that did not get invited to a dance. They've been left behind, so they kind of want to play spoiler to be like, hey, F you guys, you left us behind. We're going to knock your playoff team out of contention. A loss for Washington would certainly put them in a tough spot, and it'd be a tough ask to get them in the playoff, even if they did win the Pac-12 title game, beating a rematch, most likely with Oregon at this point. Oregon State is a very talented team. They're fantastic at running the ball. Washington's defense has been a concern. It looked a little bit better against Utah, but that offense is not very talented. This is a tough matchup for the Washington defense. I do think the Huskies are going to win this game. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm thinking like 38-30, something like that. A close game. They will cover the spread, obviously, because it's a pick 'em, so it's nothing crazy. At this point, I like what I see out of both offenses. I think both offenses are fantastic. They're very fun to watch. Defenses, I like Oregon State's defense a little bit more, but I think the Huskies will get the job done. A prime time matchup. All the eyes are on this one out west. The slate this week's kind of weak. This is the biggest game in terms of playoff implications, in my opinion. This is a big opportunity for both teams. Washington needs to go out and get the job done if they want to be serious contenders for national championship this year.
Now looking at 7:30 on ESPN, Missouri hosting Florida. Tigers coming off a big one over Tennessee, where they just completely shut down that offense, and their own offense had great balance. Cody Schrader put on a complete clinic, up to 1124 rushing, 11 touchdowns. He has a big day through the air as well, 116 yards receiving. This is a great trio of pass catchers as well, led by Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Mookie Cooper. All these guys have 400+ yards this year. Burden's production's been a little bit quieter last couple weeks. He did have that big touchdown against Georgia, though, but he has not been catching the ball as much as he was early on in the year. He had a 6-game start to the year. We had 7+ receptions. Hasn't seen 7 receptions since the 7th of October. So he certainly hasn't been getting the same volume, but they've been winning football games. So I'm not going to sit here and play tick for tat or any of that nonsense. I don't think Luther will either. Strong left side's really proven it. Xavier Delgado, Javon Foster, these guys are really stepping up over the last month, and they showed it against Georgia as well. The Florida offense has been impressive. Graham Mertz, only 2 interceptions, 73% comp rate, 272 yards per game. Just this impressiveness from this passing attack. Vicky Pearsall's been great. Eugene Watson as a freshman stepping up. Arliss Boardingham as well. And Montreal Johnson's been a solid receiver for them. The offensive line, the rushing attack hasn't been as sound as we thought. Still 2 productive backs, Johnson and Etienne, 620+ rushing each. Very identical production there. Biggest problem here is the Florida defense is a lot worse than we expected, Nick. Missouri has all this momentum right now. I think they're going to run away with this one after LSU had 701 yards of offense. Arkansas had 481, 480+ for Georgia as well. Lost 3 in a row, allowed 39+ points in all 3 of those. Missouri's offense is not who you want to face right now. Actually, it's 4 games in a row of Florida allowing 39+ points. So the defense has just been abysmal for Florida, Nick. Even though I do have some solid players that can certainly change the game, like Princely, Umanameli, Shamar James as well. Tariq Sapting's been impressive on the defensive front. Missouri, though, they're going to run away with this one. 11.5 is the line. I think Florida will put up a nice effort. I see them losing by 14 to 21 points, though, in this one as they get ready to try and host the Noles in 2 weeks at home to disrupt their season.
Totally on the same board with you there. I think 14 to 20 point victory for Mizzou at this point makes a whole lot of sense. I do think both the teams are heading in the right direction with their current coaches. I think Missouri having a fantastic season, overachieving by a lot of people's expectations. I was pretty high on the Tigers. I think they're a very talented team. As long as they were able to throw to Luther Burden, they've been able to do that. Nearly 1,000 yards receiving, 8 scores. Brady Cook looks good in the pocket, comfortable, 2,700 yards passing, 17 scores, 6 interceptions. Graham Mertz looks fantastic for Florida, which is a crazy thing I didn't think I'd be able to say. At 5-5, I think they're a very good 5-5 team. I don't think the record tells the full story for this team. The defense is disappointing. 700 yards given up against LSU is a very bad number, but they were hanging in there with the Tigers, except for a bad fourth quarter, kind of let that one get out of hand for Florida. They're a very talented team that's heading in the right direction, but Missouri is a better team at this point who's got big wins. They beat Tennessee. They looked good in that game. Yes, they lost to Georgia, but they hung in there. They were in that one late. They could have easily beat Georgia. And Missouri is the 3rd best team in the SEC. I do not care what anyone says. It goes Georgia, Alabama 1 and 1A, and then you got Missouri right there. They're the 3rd best team in the conference right now. They're very talented, very deep team. I'm excited for the Tigers next year. They're going to win this one at home. I like what they got here right now. I think the offense is fantastic. Defense obviously was very solid, getting picks against Tennessee and holding them to just 7 points last week. I love the Tigers in this one. It's a very interesting match of the SEC. I think this is one you're going to watch if you're a neutral. You kind of just get a good read on these 2 teams. These are 2 very promising programs, in my opinion, that are very much on the upswing. I'm excited for what they can do next year.
Now looking down to Ames, Iowa State hosting Texas. I picked the Horns a couple weeks ago against Kansas State to cover that line with ease, 3.5, and they only ended up winning by 3. They blew it in the second half. Malik Murphy, great first half, didn't look that great in the second. And then I picked TCU to upset Texas last week, and they were losing by 20 points themselves, and they only ended up losing by 3. Texas has been awful in the second half these last 2 games. Even with Quinn Ewers being back, Nick, they were just a stalemate. Jonathan Brooks had a massive game, ended up touring his ACL. He's out for the year. That's a big loss. He's been great for them. I think C.J. Baxter, Jaden Blue, this is a very deep backfield, and they'll be all right. But in terms of playmaking and physicality, they might not be the same when it comes to running the ball. Great weapons in Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, Jatavian Sanders. Quinn Ewers, of course, his return, having a good year, 70% comp rate, 14 touchdowns, 280 yards per game in 8 contests this year. But his return didn't seem to do much, Nick. A lot of Texas fans were like, against Kansas State, young quarterback in Murphy, and I totally understood and agreed with them. But he had a nice game against TCU, but a lot of that came again in the first half. They were not very good in that second frame there. Allowed TCU to really come back. This defense has not been as sound either. They're just not playing complimentary football, it seems. Giving up 300-plus passing the last 2 weeks. They've been really great in the trenches, though. Still one of the best defensive lines in the country. Jalen Ford, of course, at linebacker is great. He allows, guys like Ethan Burke, Devondre Sweat to do the dirty work. Byron Murphy as well. Probably the best tandem of defensive tackles in college football. 7.5-point line, Iowa State. I picked on the win at home against Kansas a couple weeks ago, unable to get the job done, and I kind of feared that this offense would be the reason why. The defense still plays with plenty of heart. They're very tough. Guys like TJ Tampa, Bayou Freiler. They have ball players on this defense. You never hear about it until game day. Caleb Bacon, a lot of lower-ranked guys that play with plenty of heart, and they're going to be good against the run in this game. I think they'll play overall sound on defense. Freshman quarterback Rocco Beach, though, this is going to be tough for him. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel. I think they have some nice weapons that can be game changers. The rushing attack, though, probably seems like an opportunity for Eli Sanders, Katavius Norton. They're probably going to struggle heavily in this game, Nick. I'd love to pick Iowa State, but I picked the upstate last week and I was wrong, and I'm just not going to do it again. It's going to make me sound like a Texas hater, and I am not that one bit. I think this is a very good football team. But the last couple weeks, 3 out of the last 4 games decided by 1 score. That's not a great look one bit, Nick, especially when you were dominating in most of these.
The historical context in this game I think is very interesting. Just want to quickly throw back to 2011, where Oklahoma State was unbeaten. They traveled to Jack Trice Stadium. They traveled to Ames. That game was on a Friday night. They played Iowa State, a similar Iowa State that was not a great team by any stretch of the imagination. They were 5-4 at that point. And Iowa State knocked off Oklahoma State in double overtime to knock them out of the BCS title game. Ultimately, Alabama got the nod over them in a very historic game. If you're a college football game, you remember this. I remember watching this game live. One of the best games in college football history, in my opinion. Just a true instant classic. And I think this game is shaping up on Saturday night to be similar to that. The stage looks about similar. Texas has to win out at this point. They want to go to the playoffs. Since they beat Alabama, they've regressed, in my opinion. They've looked a lot worse since they beat Alabama. They lost to Oklahoma, who's not a very good team, limped their way through beating Houston, almost blew it against Kansas State in overtime, and almost blew it last week against TCU. This team is struggling right now. They're not getting the job done. I know they've been dealing with injuries. They're having some health issues, but they've not been able to get the job done when they're getting close to blowing it. They've been able to get the wins, but they're just barely skating by. I think you can only gamble with fate so many times before it comes to bite you. At this point, I think that they're going to hit that skid mark here and struggle against this Iowa State team that's got nothing to lose at this point, but just an opportunity to play spoiler. Matt Campbell's company, they are physical. They love to play spoiler. They've looked great over the past 5 games. I know they lost to Kansas, but outside of that, they looked great in wins against TCU, Cincinnati, Baylor, and BYU. I like them to win a defensive struggle here late in the game. I think Iowa State's going to pull off the upset and send shockwaves through college football, knocking Texas out of a playoff spot and denying the Big 12 a spot in the playoff in their last season, as we know, the old Big 12. This is a very important game for many people in college football, as it has, like I said, shockwaves that go about. I like Iowa State's physicality on defense to shut down the offense and give the quarterback for Texas some problems, give the running game some problems as well. I like the running game for Iowa State to have a decent night. I don't think when you have a freshman quarterback like Beach, like you said, I don't think he's going to be the one that is the star here. I think Sanders will have a good game on the ground, having a solid season, 467 and 4 scores for him. I like to see him have a pretty big breakout game. Cold, chilly night in Ames, Iowa, with a lot on the line for Texas. I just love Iowa State in this one. This feels like it's part of the script here. I'm taking the Cyclones in this one. This is going to be a hell of a game to watch. I can certainly guarantee that.
Yeah, 4 games in a row of less than 100 rushing yards allowed by Texas, so it's going to be hard for them to be good on the ground. They just have to be solid in spurts, though. So being solid is really, 75, 80 yards from your running back. That's a really good game in a situation like this. Texas, though, I think they're going to win this game by 10 points. A lot of close games as of late, really kind of squandering away their playoff hopes. I know they have that one loss, and they can still be a one-loss conference championship winner with a head-to-head over Alabama. But looking at it right now, Nick, they're going to have to be pretty impressive if they want to get the nod, especially if Alabama takes care of business in Atlanta. So nice little Week 12 slate we have here. Never a dull slate in college football, even though you look on paper, it's not great. Plenty of madness will happen. Plenty of 6 bids on the line, playoff spots as well. A lot's going to happen here that's not expected one bit, and you're going to go ahead with Iowa State over Texas. So I think that certainly concurs that point. Appreciate you joining me once more.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this week. It's a slow week, but there are some important games. Mountain West conference title game, a berth decider, some other conference title game spots being decided at ACC with Louisville have a chance to punch their ticket. Some other important games. UTSA has an opportunity to punch their ticket in their conference title game. Texas-Iowa State's a great game. I think there are some fun games across the board. Some other games didn't cover. SMU-Memphis is a pretty good game in that conference as well. This is a fun slate. It's a small little slate, nothing crazy, as we build up for the Thanksgiving holiday, which has a lot of incredible games. A nice way to kind of get you comfortable and get ready for that great rivalry week coming up next week.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.
Yeah, I'm taking Cyclones, baby.